Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to get started in just another moment. We're going to give everyone another moment to join the webinar, but we are really excited to talk to you today about generative AI and ChatGPT. Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're giving everyone just another moment or two to join, and then we'll get kicked off. Thank you for joining us and for your interest. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Allison Weiss, and I'm the Associate Director of Corporate and Executive Education at the Brown School of Professional Studies. The mission of the Brown School of Professional Studies is to empower you with the resources, tools, and networks that you need to change the way the world works for good. We know that we often spend over 50% of our lives at work, and the way that we work today is broken. It's not productive, it's not inclusive or healthy. And so we offer a suite of programs ranging from master's degrees to certificates to short courses on in-demand skills that you need in order to advance your career and to lead in a better way to make the way the world we work better and work for the common good. So we are so excited that you are here today to learn an in-demand skill. If by the end of this, you are as excited about these topics of generative AI and innovation and entrepreneurship as we are, there will be the opportunity for you to learn more about a short course that you can take with Mike in order to continue this learning journey, and we hope that you will. In the meantime, I am so excited to introduce Mike Grandinetti and this incredible topic. We were talking before this session started about how this topic of generative AI is more transformational than any other technology we can kind of remember seeing in the last decade or so. And so we're so glad that you have chosen today to come and to learn about how you can optimize it for your life, because I think it's going to make a huge difference and already is. In September 2023 alone, there were 1.5 billion visits to the ChatGPT website, which is unheard of, and it's just continuing to grow. And in addition, there are studied gaps in knowledge. So in March of this year, there was a survey that found that 70% of students are using ChatGPT, but only 30% of faculty are. And that similar concept is reflected in the workplace between leadership and entry-level workers. And so this is a skill that's not going anywhere, it's only going to continue to grow in importance, and that we all need in our work lives. We are, so I'm about to hand things over to Mike, but my last housekeeping note for you is that if you have a question at any point, please don't wait until the end to ask it. Please type it into the chat. And if you click on the bottom bar, click on the Q&A, I'm sorry, I misspoke, the Q&A button on the bottom bar, and type in your question and submit it there. I'll be monitoring the Q&A bar throughout. And so I will raise your questions at the end, and we'll be able to get to as many questions as possible if you submit your questions throughout. So with that, I am so excited to turn things over to Mike Grandinetti. I learn something from him absolutely every time. He is always updating his material. He's always so on top of the latest trends. I don't know how you do it, Mike. And he is incredible. Mike Grandinetti is an adjunct professor in the Brown School of Engineering. In addition, he's a veteran Silicon Valley engineer and had a background as a McKinsey consultant, and was the chief of operations for 8 different startups. And so when he's talking about these incredible skills that we all need to learn, it's not just theory for him. He has a deep focus on how to apply everything he teaches right into the workplace. And in addition, he's an amazing and experienced teacher. He has affiliations with MIT, Harvard, and Berkeley, in addition to, of course, his affiliation with Brown. So with that, I'll turn things over to you, Mike. Welcome.
Allison, thank you as always for such a warm introduction, and hello everyone. It's an honor to have a chance to share with you what is happening in the world of generative artificial intelligence. And of course, as Allison mentioned, right, this is all within the context of an innovation leadership course that we will be repeating. We taught this first in the fall, and we'll be teaching it again early in the new year. And it's impossible not to include generative AI in any course on innovation. given the transformational effects that it has. So we're going to talk a lot today about how generative AI is unlocking human advantage. And I can tell you that I am using it all day, every day. And it has made such an incredible difference in my work as an educator and my work as an innovation consultant, and across pretty much every dimension of my professional and personal life. And I want to share with you why I've said that. So because we are operating within the context of a course on innovation leadership, let me just take a minute to provide some historical context and then to explain why generative AI is such a meaningful addition to the history of innovation, right? So very, very quickly, we go way back to the 1780s and England, and the very first wave of innovation at the time was known as the Industrial Revolution. And what you're going to see in each of these 6 waves is just a very small number of profoundly transformative scientific inventions and engineering innovations that really catalyzed each wave. And what it did is it changed the way that we experienced everything about life, the way we work, the way that we socialize, the way that we move around. And so over the last several hundred years, we've been through a number of waves. And as we fast forward to 1990, we've obviously been living in this digital wave. And I think all of us know how unbelievably dependent we've become on our smartphones and our apps. But we are now very decidedly in the 6th wave. And AI in general is a very fundamental, transformational, disruptive technology underpinning that wave. And so what's really interesting, right? This is a slide that was presented at the IT symposium by the Gartner Group. The Gartner Group is undoubtedly the most respected technology analysis and consulting firm in the world. And their clients pay them millions of dollars a year in professional fees to help them understand what technologies they should be adopting and deploying, and how they should be thinking about new technologies on the horizon. And as you can see here, they describe digital disruptions starting in the early 1990s, which essentially happened with the downloading of the Netscape Mosaic browser. The democratization and the access of the World Wide Web is considered the most historical digital disruption in history. And they compare it to the disruptive effects of World War II and the Industrial Revolution. That's a pretty remarkable set of equivalents, right? Profound secondary and tertiary types of effects. And keep that chart in mind. And of course, what that has led to is a digital world that we are all navigating day in and day out, with our iPhones, with our Samsung phones, in the app stores. And digital life has just become something that we've all become used to. And we interact with so many of our retailers and banks and hospitals, in a digital way today. It's impossible to overstate how much this has changed life. Okay. And what you may or may not know is, for those of you who have not been paying attention, artificial intelligence has been in the background for many, many years. I'm going to start on the right hand of this chart, and I'm going to say, as far back as the late 1990s, early 2000s, Amazon has used its recommendation engine to highlight merchandise that it thought we might find interesting. Netflix, the Netflix recommendation engine developed actually through a global hackathon, was introduced in the early 2000s. It's always been a very important part of Netflix's offering. On the left-hand side, Google has actually used autocomplete as far back as 2004. And we, of course, now see that specifically within Gmail, okay? Grammarly, many of you probably use Grammarly if you use Gmail. It's embedded, but it goes all the way back to 2009 as a writing assistant. And of course, Siri appeared on the horizon in 2010 as an independent app, and then was integrated into the iPhone 4S as far back as 2011. And then many of us probably have Alexa speakers at home, and that technology is 10 years old. 2016 was a watershed moment because a lot of early chatbot implementations were deployed across all kinds of businesses, okay? And they focused on enhancing customer service, providing, proprietary information, facilitating transactions, and improving user engagement. And as we can see here, just a handful of examples: consumer finance, Bank of America introduced a chatbot-driven AI called Erica to help customers with their banking needs. And Sephora introduced a chatbot on the Kik Messenger. Some of you may know the Kik Messenger, which originated on the BlackBerry device, which provided beauty tips and product recommendations. So AI has been with us, even though a lot of people don't really fully realize that, for quite some time, okay? And then in 2016, all of the major social networks, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and even TikTok, introduced algorithms to customize user feeds. All of them were originally displaying posts in chronological order, but they wanted to improve the user experience by prioritizing content that was deemed most relevant to each user, okay? So a lot of AI in the background that you've been interacting with for a very long time. Now, if we go back to the timeline, the evolution of artificial intelligence, it actually goes back to 1950. So we're talking almost 75 years ago. And the term itself was coined at the famous Dartmouth Conference in 1955. And yes, there are a lot of milestones that were achieved, and there are a lot of setbacks. But what I want you to look at is in that blue box, we experienced something called AI winter. Okay, after many, many false starts and dead ends, AI had lost its currency. Now, I would say that I don't agree completely with this timeline. And I think the reason that the creator of this timeline kept the winter as only 30 years is because in 1997, the IBM Deep Blue computer very famously defeated Russian world chess master Garry Kasparov. Now, Big Blue in 1997 was a very different kind of AI than we're seeing today. It was very much programmatic, okay? It was rules-based, and it was brute force computing power that allowed it to beat the chess champion. AI winter, I would say, really ended in 2012 with the introduction of something called AlexNet, which reinforced the importance of neural networks, which is really underlying everything that we see today, okay? And so AlexNet was, in fact, in 2012, a watershed moment in AI research. It really began the modern deep learning era. And many of you may have heard of Geoffrey Hinton, who is considered the godfather of AI. He, along with one co-founder, Ilya Slavitsky, who is now the chief scientist of OpenAI, and Alex Kuznetsky, this three-person team was able to prove that deep neural networks being used for machine learning tasks was a superior approach, okay? And that it outperformed all traditional learning techniques around in major AI, machine learning techniques. What it also did is it highlighted the potential of graphical processing units in training these networks. If you pay attention to the stock market, you'll note that NVIDIA has outperformed every other stock on the stock exchange this year. They are, without peer, leading the charge in massive graphical processing units that are really just essential for training these massive models, okay? And so with the acceleration of the adoption of deep learning in a whole range of applications, from image and speech recognition to natural language processing, we really laid down the foundation for what has come to be known as ChatGPT, okay? And so if artificial intelligence is the umbrella category under computer science, historically, machine learning has been in place for many years, right? We started to see machine learning and computer vision really take off with its applications, for example, in the medical industry, the ability to diagnose all kinds of cancerous lesions, intrusions in bodies that outperformed world-leading practitioners. And then finally, deep learning, which takes it to a completely different level of understanding. Okay. And so in the background, if we look at the chart on the left, by using these neural networks and performing deep learning, we've seen a whole range of human skills that have been matched. Their performance has been matched by a wide range of different applications. So back in 2015, image recognition using deep learning matched human performance. In 2017, speech recognition matched human performance. In 2018, the ability to comprehend reading and handwriting matched human performance. And then finally, in 2023, we saw common sense completion. All of these are foundational within ChatGPT and some of the other major chatbots, okay? And so what we see then is that throughout history, without the introduction of a killer application addressing a killer use case, transformation does not happen. And we go back to something called Amara's Law. Roy Amara coined this, and it has been incredibly consistent. We tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short term, and we underestimate its effect in the long term. Think, for example, of quantum computing. We've been hearing about quantum computing since its invention in the 1960s. Think about virtual reality. Metaverse was coined decades ago. Meta has been working on, VR glasses now for 15 years. And then autonomous vehicles. We all saw the tragic need to shut down the pilot in San Francisco, right? So we hear about all these technologies, people get very excited, but they take a very long time to come into practice. ChatGPT is the killer app, okay? It is the thing that took AI out of the background and moved it into the common consciousness. And it really turbocharges human productivity and human cognition. So at a very high level, what generative AI essentially does is it allows people to be able to, just through simple natural language processing, it could be entering text into a prompt, or just last week, you can actually speak into ChatGPT and you can talk to it the way that you talk to Siri or Alexa. But its ability to understand what you need is profoundly, orders of magnitude, more sophisticated. And so it understands the meaning of various kinds of data. That could be text, images, voice, video, 3D objects. And it's able to achieve that understanding through deep learning methods so that they really learn the representations and the meanings of data, and they can anticipate words and sentences in video frames, okay? And so we are definitively now living in the AI era. As Allison said, ChatGPT gets 1.5 billion visits a month. You have to recognize that GPT 3.5 came out last November. So we're only 1 year into this phenomena. And GPT-4 actually came out in March of last year. And so it's impossible to ignore the fact that we are now firmly, after a 75-year runway, in the era of AI, okay? And so I want to remind you of the Gartner Group, and I want to share with you something that they wound up, posting or, sharing in a presentation at their recent IT Expo. If you look at, remember that the internet and the World Wide Web was considered to be the most significant digital disruption in history, comparable to World War II. Most of these disruptions enter the Gartner chart at level 1 or level 2 on the left, okay? And they eventually try to work their way up the curve. Very few of them get very, very far up, okay? And so what's amazing is, again, Gartner, that in no way is prone to hyperbole, has done something it has never done. It has taken a technology and it's already put it almost at the equivalent of a reinvention of society, okay? And what that basically means, it already 1 year in, It has the equivalent capability of transforming the world the way semiconductors have. But remember, semiconductors were introduced to the world in 1979 by Intel, the first microprocessor, the famous 8088. Okay, television, IBM mainframe. So all of these technologies that have been around for a half a century or more. And Gartner is saying that generative AI has the equivalent in 1 year of its reinvention capabilities, and it's only going to become more powerful and certainly get to the revolutionized phase relatively quickly. Okay, now someone who might be a little bit more prone to hyperbole is a face you may recognize. This is Mark Cuban. Cuban started out as an internet entrepreneur. He sold his first company to Yahoo back in the early days of the dot-com rush for about $400 million. And he's obviously very well known now. He's been on Shark Tank forever, and he is the owner of the NBA Dallas Mavericks basketball team. I don't care how big or small you are, you've got to learn about AI. I don't care if you're a one man or one woman show, if you've got 5,000 employees, you have to understand how AI is going to impact your business. And I have to agree with Mr. Cuban. Okay, so let's talk about why Gartner and Mark Cuban, they couldn't be more different, are saying this. Let's look at its impact. Let's look at a couple of recent studies. One was conducted with Boston Consulting Group, one of the premier strategy consulting firms in the world, along with Harvard Business School and Wharton. They took 750 BCG consultants, and they gave and they had them work on 18 different tasks: creative tasks, analytical tasks, marketing, and writing tasks. And they divided them into a control group and then a group that had access to ChatGPT to do the work. And what did they find? Well, they found a number of fascinating outcomes. Those that used ChatGPT versus those that didn't had a significant improvement in the quality of their work. Okay, as we go on the horizontal axis here from 4 to 6. But they also found that those using GenAI finished 12.2% more tasks in that time period. They completed those tasks 25% more quickly, and they produced 40% higher quality results. Okay. Now, what's really extraordinary is that when you looked at the lower 50th percentile of the participants, they saw a far more significant improvement in their score, up 43%, versus the top half of skilled participants. This is remarkable because what it says is you can level up your organization, level up the skills of the lower performers, and bring them up to a level of the high performers, something every HR organization and every leader longs to do, has often longed to do. Now let's look at a different study, and this comes from Stanford and the Human-Centered AI Lab. And what they did is they looked at almost 5,200 customer support agents across a wide range of companies and industries. And what they determined is that the tool increased productivity as measured by issues resolved per hour by 14%, very consistent with the study I just shared with you from Harvard Business School and Wharton, which was 12%. Further, they said that it helps workers move down the experience curve, meaning that in an industry, the call center space, high levels of attrition. It's a very hard job, and they're being more and more verbally abused in this era that we live in. And so you have a lot of new people coming in. It's able to make them much more productive, much more quickly. So it's been able to improve customer sentiment or satisfaction. It's reduced requests for managerial intervention. And it is improving employee retention in a high attrition job. Okay, remarkable. And here's just an example of a screen that a customer agent would be looked at, right? So sample AI generated suggested responses. And you can click on, in my opening, I want to understand, I want to recommend, I want to close. So it gives you a number of different potential scripts, if you would, that you can use to address a client, okay? Phenomenally productive. And so if we go back to the great Steve Jobs, when he initiated the personal computer revolution, he described his vision of the personal computer as a bicycle for our minds. Well, ChatGPT and Bard and generative AI solutions are really like a tandem bicycle. They are a co-pilot. They are riding along with us, and they are augmenting our capability, okay? Feeding us information that we would not have been able to come up with on our own. And so what that allows us to do then, right, based on these studies, is to amplify human advantage in the enterprise. And so if you look at this chart from McKinsey, what it tells you is that there's a wide range of functional roles: sales, marketing, software engineering, whether it be in corporate IT or in product development, customer operations, product R&D, all of which are going to see very, very high impact. And they already are. What's amazing is if you look at marketing and sales, and of course, the darker the color blue, the higher the impact. It is universally relevant. Every industry, high tech, banking, pharma, education, healthcare, insurance, consumer packaged goods, all of them see significant impact in their sales and marketing functions. Under customer operations, where are there darker blue types of squares? High tech, banking, telecom, healthcare, insurance, consumer packaged goods. And then in product R&D, we see a tremendous amount of ability to have impact around the creation of semiconductors, the creation of consumer product goods, advanced manufacturing, pharmaceutical and medical products. And then software engineering is also very consistently high across all industries. And so this is what makes ChatGPT and generative AI so powerful. It arrived on the scene with many, many, many killer applications, too many to even conceive of. And so, for example, let's say we want to work with a team and we need to come up with new ideas for a new product. Well, an experiment was run at Wharton where they took Wharton MBAs and they wanted to see how they would compare to ChatGPT 4 in coming up with product ideas for college students with a price of $50 or less. The MBAs were asked to come up with 200 ideas. ChatGPT came up with 200 ideas. And then what they did is they tested those 400 ideas with a consumer intent to purchase survey in the target market. And what they were able to identify is what were the top 10% of these 400 ideas? What were the 40 very best ideas? This is amazing. 35 of the 40 top ideas came not from incredibly bright, incredibly competent Wharton MBAs, but from ChatGPT, 35 of 40, okay? Another study was done at the University of Missouri by Professor Egan on augmenting creativity using generative AI. And what he did is he surveyed 1,000 content creators, bloggers, podcasters, and he said that 67% are using Gen AI tools for creative tasks, and half of them are reporting that it enhanced their creativity and their productivity, and that as a result of that, it led to an increase in the number of followers and their income. And if we move into marketing, which we saw as McKinsey identified, one of the most significant functional roles that will be and is already being impacted by generative AI, it turns out that based on a BCG study of 200 chief marketing officers across the US, Canada, Europe, and Asia, 90% of chief marketing officers are either using generative AI or they're testing generative AI. And it's not surprising, marketing has become a very technology-focused role in the digital era because everything is so quantifiable today. 2/3 of marketing executives see personalization, which is the holy grail of marketing, as the single biggest area where they are focusing right now. And if you look at the impact of where generative AI can be most significant, everybody cares about leads, real time based on customer trends. You can do marketing optimization, A/B testing of all kinds of marketing campaigns, A/B testing of headlines, subject lines, content, images, call to action, A/B testing of different search engine optimization strategies, personalized outreach through chatbots and virtual assistants, dynamic content that leads to personalization so that when I visit a website, like we visit Netflix, each of us sees something different that is relevant to us. Okay, all of these things are available today. Sales, a product known as Gong integrated into Salesforce. What it does is quite remarkable. It literally listens in on voice discussions, email exchanges, chat messages, demos that salespeople do as they interact with customers. And it then gathers up all of this data from the entire Salesforce, and it correlates it with who are the most effective salespeople. And so once again, just like we talked about with those two studies, able to draw upon best practices across your sales team so you can level up everybody on the sales team, making them more productive in generating revenue. And then an incredibly powerful tool called Conversica that I actually started using about 7 years ago in one of my startups. Okay, and this uses a highly personalized approach to reach out to leads, to be able to speak to them in a tone of voice and in a way that is most meaningful to them using the channel of communication they prefer. And it dramatically outperformed my own telesales and telemarketing team and its ability to get meetings and to be able to drive sales qualified leads. It's almost a miraculous kind of capability that's only gotten that much more competent in the world of generative AI. In terms of customer experience, we referenced the Stanford study. Here's an example of fidelity, right? In a classic high attrition rate call center. And so it takes a lot of ongoing learning and development for call center agents to be effective continuously over a long period of time. You've got to teach them. They have to practice. You need to give them feedback. They need to introspect and reflect. And, historically, Fidelity, like so many others, has used a human mentor that would listen in on calls and then mentor. And now generative AI can actually serve as a virtual mentor, both during and after training. It's able to monitor conversation, freeing up managers for more strategic tasks, and recommend different language or actions to resolve customer issues. And it can also teach the agent about questions it didn't know the answers to. Okay, and so just like we saw at the Stanford study, dramatic acceleration of individual learning compared to a control group without GEI, the quality of their work, the productivity, and their worker satisfaction, all improving. Morgan Stanley, uploaded literally 10,000 documents into its own version of ChatGPT from OpenAI, because what they recognize is in their wealth management team, which is at the very core of their business, so much data was lying dormant and widely dispersed. And of course, wealth management people need to be very, very hyper current on what's happening in the markets. And so what Morgan Stanley was able to do was create an internal knowledge management system using generative AI that can bridge the knowledge gap that these experts were facing. And so the goal was to make wealth management knowledge readily available to all advisors. In their internal assessment, it has been transformative in its ability to serve client needs. Okay, I'm going to skip the next one. Software development. Generative AI can increase developer speed. So it is very, very effective in documenting code, 45 to 50% more productive, generating code, 35 to 45% more productive, and refactoring code. And refactoring code basically means reorganizing code so that it runs more effectively. Okay, so we're hearing all kinds of extraordinary testimonials from developers that are developing code far more productively than they ever have throughout their careers. Okay, and once again, without spending a lot of time on this slide, what you see is they're enjoying their work more, they feel happy, they're able to focus on satisfying and more meaningful work, and they're in a flow state, okay? So a much higher level, if you just look above the positive negative breakpoint, a much higher level of positive responses. And so this is another example. These are critical employees, and there's a lot of demand for them, and we want to keep them satisfied and keep them on our team. And so generative AI through either the GitHub Copilot or just using ChatGPT is a profoundly transformative experience for software developers, okay? And because I know that in the Brown community, a lot of people are thinking about education, I wanted to include just very briefly an example of all of the different kinds of generative AI tools, 280 or more, that have entered into the pipeline of a prominent edtech venture capital firm known as Reese Capital, okay? And for personalized learning and support, career and skill development, content creation enhancement, operational efficiency, research and information access, and academic integrity. And the two that are the most significant in terms of both the number of companies and the amount of capital raised come in the personalized learning and support and the career and skill development categories, okay? So we're talking 216 companies having raised almost $350 million to date, okay? And then in design, okay, for people manufacturing physical products, the ability of using generative design to make impossible designs possible, to be able to optimize for materials and manufacturing methods. This is also being used by people that are repairing the broken bridge and highway infrastructure today in the United States, okay? And so let me begin to conclude here, right? The future is already here, and I've hopefully just proven it to you. It's just not that evenly distributed, and that's always the case. So commercial leaders who think that they should be using generative AI on the right, on the upside, the expectation is either often or always, okay? And for generative AI, that's 90%, but look at the reality. A very small number of people are actually using it often or always. That's a big, big miss, okay? And so to quote the great Alvin Toffler, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write. That's table stakes today. But those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And to relearn, understanding that we have the ability to get on the tandem bike with generative AI and become far more productive, do far more meaningful work, and have far more satisfaction in our jobs. And so part of the course, the innovation leadership course that we'll be teaching within Brown SPS again in the in the new year, is to help you and your colleagues reskill. Okay, it's critical that we do this. Maybe more critical than at any time that I can remember in my career. And so the average half-life of skills today is less than 5 years. And in some tech fields, it's 2.5 years and falling quickly. Okay, and so reskilling is really a strategic competitive imperative today, right? And you need to embed it in your overarching strategy. You need to establish leaders as reskilling champions. And you need to be able to leverage partnerships with institutions like Brown SPS to help you and your teams reskill. Okay, so with that, I want to wrap up and I want to answer questions for everyone.
Thank you so much, Mike. And every single time I learn so much from you. And I think this might have been a completely different presentation than the one you gave last time, because you're always keeping your content so up to date. And I think that's just absolutely incredible and something that everyone here can expect if they choose to join us. And so I'm going to share a little bit of information about the course that Mike teaches.
Let me stop sharing.
Leadership, thank you. The Innovation Leadership course. So if you are as jazzed about learning from Mike as I always am, and you would like to continue that learning journey, we'd love to have you with us. And I also want to remind you that if you have a question at any time about generative AI or about the program, please put it into the Q&A bar, the Q&A button on the bottom bar of Zoom. And so with that, I will share just a little bit about the program. So I won't spend much time on this section of why innovation matters, because I think Mike has done such an incredible job of sharing that over the last 25 minutes already. But I do think there's an interesting gap that is shown, because when you look at the numbers across the board, innovation is one of the most important skills in a modern workforce. we find that leads to about 2.6 times higher shareholder returns over 5 years. So it makes your organization more profitable. We find that 62% of CEOs identify innovation as a top 3 priority for their organization. So it makes you as an individual more competitive in your own career. And that 82% of professionals prefer to work in companies that are known for their innovative culture. So whether you are looking as an organizational leader, an individual looking for career advancement, or an HR learning development lead looking to make your organization attractive to talent, innovation is sort of the key answer to kind of all 3 of those questions. But, and this is a huge but, only 21% of executives report that their company does, 21% of executives report that their company does not have the expertise, resources, and commitment to pursue new growth successfully. So there's a huge gap between what is needed and what is currently able to be done within organizations. And that is why we designed this program, to be able to help each of you become more innovative within your sphere of influence. So whether you're thinking about this at an individual level and becoming more competitive for a quickly changing landscape, or if you are a team or organizational leader who's looking to do the same for your product, your program, or your organization, this program is for you. We have a couple specific target audiences in mind. The first is directors and VPs who are shaping your organization's strategy and products. Secondly, our program and project managers and innovation team members who are leading the change at your organization. Thirdly is HR and culture leaders who are looking to foster creativity in the workplace from more of a cultural lens. But then lastly, it's you. If you are here and you are interested in these topics, then you have already demonstrated the interest and the passion that will make a huge difference in this program. We've already gotten to meet our incredible faculty member, and he will lead every session of this program, so you will get to learn directly from Mike. The program is broken up into 4 modules. For each module, you have a 1.5-hour synchronous session, and then you have a couple of readings to do in between. So this program is meant to be a really light time commitment, but really a heavy hitter in terms of impact. In Module 1, you'll learn historical perspectives from organizations that have both innovated incredibly well, so the ones we can learn from, and the ones who did not so great a job innovating, which we can also learn a lot from. And in addition, you will learn how to build an entrepreneurial mindset, so getting kind of yourself at the individual level ready to integrate innovation into your daily practice. In Module 2, you'll learn how to cultivate a creative culture so that you're not all alone on an island trying to innovate alone, but instead you are able to infuse those values into your team, your organization, and the culture around you to make this more the norm. In Module 3, you're going to learn more about using ChatGPT in your organization specifically. This was a highly requested topic. In cohort 1, we heard a lot of feedback that people wanted a full module on this. And so we've integrated a full module on ChatGPT specifically. And then in Module 4, you'll learn how to activate creativity to future-proof your team and organization. And so it's putting kind of everything you've learned in Modules 1, 2, and 3 into practice. By the end of the course, these are the outcomes we commit to you. First, you will be able to future-proof your organization and career by harnessing lessons learned from the historic pinnacle innovations and the organizations that failed to innovate in time. Secondly, you'll learn how to leverage disruptions to create innovative solutions that drive growth, value, and profitability. Third, you'll be able to update your knowledge on top trends in the innovation space, including challenges and opportunities of using ChatGPT specifically in the workplace. And lastly, you'll cultivate a culture of continuous improvement in your organization so that you're not doing this all alone. You don't have to take our word for it. Paul Sullivan, who's the Director of Business Planning and Analysis at Novartis, says, this curriculum is essential to anyone who wants to know what it takes to stay relevant in the coming years. Our next session starts February 7th, so it's just around the corner. And we are running an early bird promo now, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in just a moment. It's a light time commitment. It's just 4 weeks with 1 synchronous session on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So from just 5 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, 4 times. that will be the complete course, and you will have the opportunity to earn a certificate of completion and a digital badge from Brown University. In between, you do have a couple of hours worth of readings, but that's relatively light as well. We got feedback that the class was very manageable with a busy schedule. The enrollment deadline is January 24th, and there are limited seats available, filled on a first come, first serve basis. And we are currently running an early bird promo for 10% off by January 7th. So if you are interested in joining us, I recommend that you enroll early to take advantage of both the open slots and also the early bird pricing. And I'll send these slides afterwards, so you'll have access to this link and this information. So with that, we are happy to answer your questions on ChatGPT, innovation, AI, and the program. So first question is for you, Mike. It says on the chart you shared from Gardner, there was a term called regulated AI. What is the difference between regulated AI versus generative AI?
So regulated AI is typically something that you're looking at being used in highly regulated industries like financial services, like healthcare, where it just can't possibly move at the same pace of change, right, as it can be in more commercial entities. So it's just not going to have that same level of acceleration in the marketplace. So that's why it was separated out.
Thank you. Next question is, can you give examples of open access AI design softwares for designing Instagram posts?
Sure. I mean, you can literally use ChatGPT. So let's be very clear, right? And it's a great question. You can use the more generic models, and that could be ChatGPT, it could be Bard, it could be Claude, but there are also many marketing-centric kinds of tools. Jasper, for example, is one of them. But let me just share an example. So a week ago, I had to give a keynote to 8,500 Stellantis auto dealers in Asia. Okay, and Stellantis is Alfa Romeo, it's Fiat, it's Jeep, and I was showing them how to create a whole range of different campaigns for their automobiles. And I literally just typed in, can you create 5 different kinds of campaigns to appeal to recent university graduates who want to buy a Jeep CJ5 in Australia? And within seconds, it came up with 5 campaigns for me in terms of what would be the tagline, what would be the headline, what would be the image. And so I can tell you that you don't need to go out and do anything other than just type it into ChatGPT, and you'll be amazed at how sophisticated it was. Okay. And I showed this to these dealers and they were blown away. I did it in real time. Yep.
That's incredible. Thank you. Next question is for me, which is,
Yes.
Are there also courses that are focused on education and biomedical research? And I have kind of 2 answers for you for that question. The first is that the innovation leadership course that we just looked at together, it is cross-industry. And I think that's one of the strengths of the program, is that you're going to meet people from every different industry, every different field at different levels. And so I think that the core skills that you learn are transferable between industries. So the first part to my answer is that we'd love to have you in this course. And I do have a second part to that answer, which is we do also have a specific certificate. It's different. It's longer. It's a 6-month program, 4 courses that are 6 weeks each in digital health innovation. And so if you are looking for a really specific to that healthcare, the biomedical and education field, I think that could be a good fit for you as well. And that program, the goal of it is that over the 4 courses, you are actually building an implementation plan and a pitch deck that you can utilize either internally as an entrepreneur or externally if you're going to pitch for funding or a grant or other types of support that you're looking for. And you're building a product, a program, or a research idea for all 4 courses. And then you have this tangible product at the end. So it's a much bigger time commitment, but it is more specific to the industry that you're asking about.
And
So,
Allison, let me just jump in. So I'm going to be teaching an exec ed course on AI this week at another institution. And I've been working with a very senior level digital expert at the Mayo Clinic. And I've created a 2.5 hour simulation that puts clinicians and administrators in, in a situations where they have to think about when it would or would not be appropriate to use Gen AI. And of course, I'm gonna curate the content for the course based on who is in the course. So it could be a very interesting thing to introduce because it's certainly going to be intended for everyone. But I think that it goes back to the question about regulated AI, right? I definitely want to address regulated AI in the course. And it's very likely I'll draw on the example from the Mayo Clinic.
that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
The next question is, I am a team lead and a lot of my team members are nervous about generative AI. So what is a tangible prompt or, entry point that I can give them so that they can start getting their familiarity with the tool?
Okay. And obviously I wish we could interact and understand why they're nervous. And I assume they're nervous because they're afraid it will take their job. One of the readings that I would recommend you look at comes from Harvard Business School professor Kareem Lakhani. And I can share this with Allison and she can follow up. And the title of this reading is AI is not going to take the jobs of people, but it will take the jobs of people who are not using AI. Okay. And so what I would say is, based on everything I presented today, if you look at the productivity benefits, if you look at the job satisfaction benefits, they can only make themselves more effective employees by using generative AI, right? So to fear is never a good approach to any kind of technology. So rather than be afraid of it and distance themselves, embrace it, learn how to dance with it, you'd be amazed. And it's not in any way complex. You can type in a question. And as of last week, you can now speak into it. I spoke into it for the first time last week. I asked it to solve this insanely complicated problem. And it blew my mind with what it was able to come back with, right? I mean, it makes Siri look like it's, an infant in the crib. So I would recommend that you let them know that they're only going to do themselves a disservice if they don't embrace it. There's really no other way to describe it.
That's really helpful. Yeah, thank you. The next question is, what ethical and DEI considerations should be top of mind when implementing generative AI at our organization?
All right, so there's no question. This is a huge, huge topic area. And I think that there's a couple of things that we have to recognize, right? I mean, there's no question that there's a lot of bias in systems. I think anybody that tells you otherwise is not being truthful with you. And so as a result of that, you need a human in the loop, okay? So I'll give you an example. There was a very famous article that was published by either Fortune or Forbes magazine naming the top 100 CEOs. And wouldn't you know, all 100 of them turned out to be white males. And, and so the question then becomes, where were the editors? How could anybody possibly publish something that, that's so outrageous in this day and age? So, AI is never going to be something where you can completely 100% rely on the output. And so you have two options. In the short term, human in the loop for sure. Long term, you're going to have the ability to provide more and more training and context to these models on your own. So if you look at that Morgan Stanley example, right, they uploaded 10,000 documents from their organization that made it more specifically context aware of the way that Morgan Stanley thinks about its wealth management business. So if an organization cares deeply about DEI, then obviously there's got to be information that needs to be uploaded into ChatGPT that your organization is using, okay? But this is the topic of the day. And Alice and I were speaking about this before the webinar started. This is something that has gotten a lot of attention, right? Biden issued an executive order about a month ago. I think there's a lot of positive intent. The good news is that unlike social media, where nobody really understood what they had wrought, from the very earliest days of the commercialization of generative AI, all of the leaders are calling for regulation. So yeah, that alone, I think, makes me feel cautiously optimistic that we're going to be in a good place.
Thank you. We have time for just one more question. So we will end with, how comfortable do you feel about ChatGPT keeping your personal contact information that you have to provide to sign in confidential?
Well, I mean, the only thing that I have to provide to sign in is my email address. And so, quite frankly, that's no different than any other app that I use, okay? It's not as if that email address is going to do anything. You know, what you need to know, though, is that when you are using ChatGPT, right, you can either use the older version, which is 3.5, and you can turn off its ability to learn from your queries.
Mm-hmm.
If you want the full-on GPT-4 with all of the amazing capabilities, then it will be using your data to train itself. Now, I personally don't care about that because I have nothing to hide, right? Everything I'm asking it is about, you know, how do I do work, right? So I'm not asking it any questions that in any way would make me feel awkward or uncomfortable. So I don't see that as an issue personally.
Thank you. Is there any one last thought or tip you want to leave this group with before we close?
If you have not used ChatGPT yet, I would strongly recommend that you don't need to have the professional version. There is a free version of GPT that is incredibly effective. It's important that we demystify it, right? We think that because it's artificial intelligence, it must be complex. And I think this is why, even though we've had AI around for 75 years, only in the last year has it really entered the common consciousness. And so whenever I know someone who has not used ChatGPT and I sit by their shoulder and they use it, they are amazed at how easy it is to use, how non-intimidating it is, and how unbelievably effective it is. And I want to also talk about one last thing. There's a lot of talk about hallucination, which means it makes stuff up. Recent studies indicate it hallucinates only about 3% of the time. And to me, the cost-benefit trade-off of getting massive improvements in creativity and productivity with only 3% of the time having something that may be inaccurate and that I'm going to check anyway. And oh, by the way, ChatGPT allows you to get citations now. So you know exactly where the data is coming from and you can go back and cross-check those citations. So to summarize it, if you haven't used it, today would be a really good day to start.
Thank you so much. This was incredible. I learned so much, and the questions you all asked were also incredible. Thank you so much for your engagement and your thoughtful curiosity about this new tool and the way it's going to impact all of our lives and the way it's already impacting all of our lives. So we hope that we get to see you in our virtual classroom. We will send more information and the recording of today's session out to make it as easy as possible. And we're here to support your journey every step of the way. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much for joining us, Mike. I always learn something from you, and I'm excited to use ChatGPT in a whole new way. Thanks to you.
Thank you, Allison. Thanks for your support. Thanks for
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye now.